we're going to get started. So we'll start off kind of high level and we'll work our way into depth. So as we go, and you guys kind of bear with me, there will be demos, there will be instructions and show you stuff. We're actually going to build something here today together. But we want to set off in the first part of this. We want to make sure we're all on the same vernacular. We're all using the same words. And so we'll start off with what an agent is, because we hear this word used all over the place. But the idea of an agent is the ability for us to automate and execute business processes using a thing that's been built using generative AI. So when we look at this, these agents separate themselves from your traditional bots or business process automations. They separate themselves in a way because they're using AI technology in order to orchestrate the conversation or to be able to orchestrate the process that's being executed. So you can almost think of it that it has to have some part of it where it is not defined. So if you say if this, then that, then you're kind of getting into where you're doing traditional bot building or you're doing traditional business process automation. That's where there's a separation in what we call an agent today. So with that, let me just flip over here so I can go to the next slide. There we go. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to talk to you about, like, okay, there's a different spectrum of all these different agents that we have. So what I'll tell you is that a lot of people want to jump straight to autonomous agents. And the issue with you doing that is the most advanced thing that you could possibly take on. So when you're trying to build inside a Copilot Studio, you might want to start more in the simpler space and work your way to more advanced in your organization. So let's talk about retrieval agents and understand what those are. So retrieval agents are going to be, and think of it that these are basically chatting over a set of data that you have. So you come in and you say you want to do like a chat GPT, but I only want it to answer questions grounded in the data that I've provided it. So this is a situation where it's not actually going to do anything other than answer questions and be able to help you get the answers to your questions. If we get into the next layer, which is task-based agents, this is where we start hooking in automation workflows like business processes. We are able to connect into APIs and do post and patch actions into backend APIs and things of that nature. And task agents are going to be where you really start getting into the ability of really helping the user get to that next level of being able to use stuff. So a lot of us can think about, we all have agents that we work with in our different lives. We have personal assistants on our phones. You can kind of think about what is it that you use those particular devices for, and why would you find value in those type of things? So a lot of these smart speakers, for example, they really only do 7 things. At the high level, there are 7 common things that smart speakers actually do. So, and a lot of those things would require an API because they're just reusable over and over, like if you wanted to check the weather or something like that. So just be aware that these are going to be examples of task-based agents. Now, when we get to autonomous agents, this is where everybody gets a little confused. A lot of people think that an autonomous agent is the equivalent to a business process automation. But a business process automation is actually a subcomponent of an autonomous agent typically. And the reason why is because a business process automation is where you would say, if this, then this, and do all that. And it's not that you couldn't have AI as part of your logic or part of something that's part of your business process automation. That's not really an autonomous agent, though. So an autonomous agent is going to be the concept of, imagine you're hiring a person. You want to give them a job description. So you want to explain what it is that they're supposed to do for you. But then you also need to give them, here's a whole bunch of manuals and information that you need to be able to do your job. Then I also need to give you, here's a whole bunch of tools that you need to be able to go do your job. And then there's this last part that I need to do, which is I need to tell you when to do your job. So when this happens, go figure out using the combination of tools and information that I've provided you to go and execute that job. And if something happens, just figure it out. just like a human would. So that's really where autonomous agents separate themselves from business process automation, is because they are non-deterministic. They aren't told if this, then do that. They are given very like guidelines and instructions.
Morning.
Okay. And so just be aware that on these, that's where autonomous agents seem to fit. Okay. So now let's talk about Copilot Studio. So Copilot Studio is basically, think of it as it's like the experience that we have to be able to build, manage, and secure AI agents. So that is the end-to-end SaaS platform that Microsoft offers for you to be able to go build your own agents that you want to build. And we have different ways that you can build. Copilot Studio comes in a light edition. The light experience is included as part of the M365 Copilot, and it's this easy way for citizen developers to be able to write very much retrieval-based agents to come in and be able to answer questions and things like that. But it's all grounded on the M365 Copilot and the Office Graph and things of that nature. So just be aware that that's kind of what the light experience is for, and it's targeted at citizen developers. Now, when we move to full experience, the full experience is end-to-end SaaS. It is made for you to be able to build the enterprise tools and the enterprise agents that you need to build within your organization, host them, run them, secure them, make them completely available, and go on and build this at scale. Now, there is an advanced extensibility option, and that is going to be what you'll hear us refer to as the Microsoft 365 Agents SDK. You have Visual Studio Code and Azure AI. These are typically used when you want a pro code, completely developer type of thing, and you want to build everything from the ground up. And so know that those particular tools are usually used to build something that plugs into Copilot Studio. And let me explain why. So if we look at the agentic ecosystem inside of Microsoft, and we'll start from the left and work our way to the right, we'll start with Copilot Chat. Copilot Chat's basically, think of it that it's an enterprise safe version of like ChatGPT, where if you want to go in and you say, hey, help me with this source code to be able to answer some questions or help me modify the source code in some way. Well, if you use a public provided system, they're using that to train the model, and you've just given your source code out to the internet. So it's not exactly enterprise ready or enterprise safe, where Copilot Chat is a free service that Microsoft offers for enterprises to be able to do that and to do it in a safe way within their organization. Now, if we move to the next, which is Copilot, the M365 Copilot, that particular one is built for personal productivity. It adds the Office Graph into this and all the ability for you to be able to do things with your productivity assistant. And so it's very focused on being able to build personal productivity and enabling you to be able to get more and more done with employees. And it's a great tool to be able to go do that. And the great thing about it is that both the Copilot Chat and the M365 Copilot can be extended through Microsoft agents. And those different agents can be built through Copilot Studio. So Copilot Studio, through the light Copilot Studio and full Copilot Studio, can build these agents and make them available to the Copilot, the M365 Copilot and Copilot Chat. So now, when we look at Copilot Studio, though, as the core component here that's in the middle, the reason it's in the middle is because one of the key parts of it is the orchestrator. It is the thing that says when to use what particular tool and how to orchestrate that whole conversation. So if you think of like a network, and you think of back when we started with networking, it used to be that computers could talk to each other on a network, but then you needed the invention of something called a router to make it where you could route to between networks. And that was the birth of the internet. So Copilot Studio is basically that conversational router that lets you go to the different agents and be able to use the different tools and all the different things that you need to assemble it into a central agent. And it also can allow you to build these different agents. But at its core, it is the conversational router. That is different than Azure AI Foundry and on the Azure side, which is our next step. In that, this is where you're going to build your own custom models or your own custom implementation of the models. Maybe you want to use 5.4 or you want to use Llama or something like that as part of what you're building inside of Copilot Studio. Well, this is where you go to Azure AI Foundry and you can go create that implementation and be able to bring it into Copilot Studio to be orchestrated. And so you can use it to create models. You can create little point-in-time agents and things like that. But you'll find that you'll eventually get to a point where you go, oh, I'd like to make this thing that helps and answers HR policy questions. I need to be able to plug it into an employee assistant. So that would be an example where Copilot Studio could come in and do this. And so when we look at this, that's where Azure fits in. Now we go into third-party and custom agents. This is where we start to get into things like Model Context Protocol, something called, which is also known as MCP servers. We also have A-to-A or agent-to-agent protocol. Now, the MCP protocol is owned by a company called Anthropic, and Microsoft has chosen to adopt that heavily. And then you have A2A, which is owned by Google, and we're also going to support both of these. But this is the ability for you to plug in things that weren't even necessarily built inside of Copilot Studio or even in Azure and be able to bring them into your different agent implementations so that we can orchestrate this. So now, let's talk about what are the major components of Copilot Studio. So if we understand these, when we get into building, it'll make a lot of sense as to what we want to think about. Now, I like to explain these as, think of them as ingredients in your kitchen. When you look at things that are in your kitchen that you're going to go make something, you could come in and say, I've got eggs, I've got flour, I've got sugar. I can have all these different ingredients, and you can combine them in different ways to be able to get different things. And so in Copilot Studio, yes, these are things that are standalone items, but they can also be combined with one another to come up with different, shall we call it, recipes that allow you to be able to build different experiences. And so what you'll find is that as you get more mature or you get better at building inside Copilot Studio, you start to figure out how to take these components and basically combine them in different ways to solve your problems. So if some of you guys said you're somewhat familiar, so a lot of you may have used one of these particular things, but you maybe don't really know what the other ingredients do or how to even combine those ingredients to get different results. So let's start with topics. And we'll start at the upper left-hand corner here. So topics are basically your advanced authoring mode that you have inside of Copilot Studio. This is where the maker is in full control of everything, from when it should be triggered all the way down to you can say it exactly like this. So I like to use an example. Imagine if I manufacture sodas or something for a living. The marketing department's probably not going to allow you to answer the question, what's the best drink in the world, if that's what your business is. They're probably going to want to specifically answer that question. So a topic is a good example of this. But we also might have a situation where we need to handle some things very specific or ask a question in a very specific way because of legal reasons or something of that nature. So topics give me that ability to fully author and release to generative AI where I want as the maker. Think of it as this is the super advanced authoring mode where you can basically build a lot of things that are no other way for you to build them, including like custom knowledge and custom tools and stuff like this. This is where topics are kind of the superpower of Copilot Studio, if you must, where you can get really, really into it. Now, the other is knowledge. So let's talk about knowledge. So knowledge is going to be your SAS-based RAG pattern. It's going to give you the ability to be able to say, here's different pieces of information that I want to be able to ask questions about. Now, I said RAG pattern. What I mean by that, RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. which is basically ChatGPT over your data. And so what you'll find is that Microsoft offers a built-in SaaS-based RAG pattern inside of Copilot Studio that we call Knowledge. And we'll talk more about each of these, and we'll see them all shortly. Then let's move to tools. So a tool is going to be where I can build a conversational wrapper around an API, or I can build a conversational implementation. One second. So imagine if you go into tools being like a conversational wrapper for APIs. It gives you the ability to say, hey, I've got this business process automation through Power Automate, or I've got a Power Platform connector, or I've got even MCP servers or prompts. And basically, what these are is they're going to give you where you have inputs and you have outputs, and they're going to give you a way to talk to that thing in a conversational way as if it's a human. And so that's where tools are really going to be very valuable for you as we continue on. Now, we also have an analytics suite, and it's important to understand that analytics are sort of core as part of Copilot Studio because of the fact that not only are we building, but we have to run and manage this over time. So this is where the analytics comes into play. We also have channels. Channels are going to be the way that you want to interface with a user. So when you think about it, an example of a channel would be the phone, or maybe text message, or a web chat, or Teams. And so each of these different channels will have their own configuration and their own abilities. And so just be aware that that's what a channel is. It's how you interface with it. Then we move to variables. And a lot of people confuse variables with memory of a AI model. Variables are different. Variables are where we store things into what we call the conversation state. And what that is doing is I can load data in for reuse later on, and then I might even be able to move things around and be able to change the way that I'm orchestrating the conversation based upon something that's in a variable. An example of a variable would be like the language that the user is speaking or the agent is configured to speak. So I might change to use a specific set of information based upon that particular variable. So let's talk about how we would walk through and how we would create something in Copilot Studio. And this is what we're going to do today as we move into the later parts into the demo, which is you can come in and you can start and it will provision everything that you need when you create an agent. Then the next part of it is you'll define some triggers, like how does it need to engage the user? Like what causes it to actually work? So an autonomous agent might need a trigger to kick it off, where a conversational agent might be that there's a conversation start event that happens that triggers it to start a conversation with you. So it just depends on what you have there. Then we go into, let's add some knowledge. Let's say, what is the data that I want to provide this agent to be able to answer questions over? Then I can go in and say, okay, well, what are the custom topics that I need to build inside of my agent that make it do the things I want as the maker, where I want to be in control, where I want to release to generative AI? Because maybe not everything needs to be generative AI. Then we go into what we call actions or tools. So the new name of actions is tools. And this is where you're going to call in your backend APIs and you're going to wire all of those in so that now I have some additional capabilities that make it into a task-based agent, for example. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to publish it to multiple channels and say, okay, which channel do I want to talk to this thing through? And then we go and we start to monitor and improve it. And then the last part is that we can look for opportunities where we can extend it with Azure AI Foundry or different extensibility places that we want to start extending our agent to be able to do more and more and more. And we can just walk this circle over and over again and do a constant improvement as we continue on. So now let's dive a little deeper into Copilot Studio. And let's talk about how all of these things kind of work together. So if we start on the left, there is this thing that we refer to as the orchestrator. The orchestrator is the thing that is the core of Copilot Studio. It is the part that is literally the router. It is figuring out what it needs to do when someone says something to it. And it can look at all of these different pieces, things like topics or knowledge, or it can look at all these different tools it has available. But we also can do things called child agents. Child agents are just a container of these things. So imagine if you had an employee assistant agent and you wanted to say, here's the set of tools and topics, or a set of tools and knowledge that are associated to HR scenarios. And then here's the set that is available to me for IT related things. This allows us to be able to roll them back up into an employee assistant, which is our master agent. I'll let you guys mute them. Okay. So this would allow us to be able to go in and say, here's how we can break those apart so that we can orchestrate. And that way we don't start using knowledge or using tools that were meant for HR scenarios in IT scenarios and things of that nature. Now, this is all inside of your Copilot Studio implementation. That's where a child agent sits. But we also have this concept of a connected agent. And the connected agent is these things to the right, which is it's outside of my actual implementation. It is a completely separate service that I want to pull in. And this is where we can connect to Copilot Studio agents. We can connect to M365 agents built with the SDK, Azure AI Foundry agents, and even Fabric Data agents. Now, some of these have been shipped. Others are on their way to being shipped. So right now, currently, the ones that are released are Copilot Studio agents and Fabric Data agents. The other two are on their way. So that's kind of in a roadmap perspective of where we're headed. So let's double click the orchestrator itself a little more because it's sort of key for us to understand how this works before we start building. So when we look at this, a user says something. When a user says something to the agent, then what's going to happen is we're going to generate a plan. And the plan is going to get generated based upon all the different things that are available to the actual agent. So it's going to look at all the topics, all the actions, or otherwise known as tools that are available, all the different knowledge items, and it'll even look at other agents that it has at its disposal. And it will come up and say, here's the plan I need to do. And let's say that it needed to combine a topic, an action, or a tool, and knowledge together to be able to answer the request that came in. So it'll combine all of those different things. It'll go pull in, like if there's a tool that I'm using, it can go in and say, oh, okay, you said what's the weather in Atlanta? Oh, okay, well, Atlanta is the location, so that's what slot filling is. And it can also run searches over the night knowledge and get all the citations and all this, right? And it can even call a topic to get the information. It will combine all of that into a unified response. And that unified response will be then returned back to the user. Now, if it can't figure out a tool that works for it or a plan on how to execute to answer that question for the user, this is when we go to the fallback system topic. And this is where you get a sorry, I didn't understand or escalate to a live agent. This is where those fall in. So just be aware this is kind of how the generative orchestrator works at a very high level. And understanding that it can combine these things for you and you will get a unified response will make it make sense as you start to get into more advanced features of where we allow you to hook this process to be able to do different things. Because there are different triggers that will allow you to intercept in different locations to be able to do things that you might want to do. Like if you want to check all of the responses that are being generated for PII, there are triggers to do this so that you can trigger when the unified response is created, I want to do something or evaluate it before I actually send it back to the user. And so you're going to see more and more of these triggers to help you intercept where you need to be. All right. So let's just double click on knowledge for a second. Again, knowledge is that RAG pattern that we talked about, the SAS-based RAG pattern. Now, Microsoft offers some different options for you. You're going to see more and more of these different sources being able to be used, and you have different ones from Dataverse and all of these others that are coming in. But I actually want to double click this a little bit more for you so that you can understand how knowledge is actually working today under the hood, because it's important to understand this so that you can figure out how to build inside of Copilot Studio. So look at the center of this where we kind of got our blue boxes with the numbers. And what I want to do is kind of walk you through what happens when knowledge is triggered. So a user says something. When they say something to it, the first thing we do is we go to stage one. Stage one is message moderation. We're going to look at what they sent. We're going to evaluate whether or not it's safe for us to be able to even answer this question. If you say, how do I build a bomb to Copilot Studio, you're going to get stopped right here. We're never going to get you to a model. You're never going to do a search query. We're going to stop you front and center because what you asked was not something we were going to service. So this is where message moderation happens. And just so you guys know, if you're going to build a custom RAG pattern, you really want to have this as a minimum of what you're going to build in your RAG pattern design. So then we move to stage two. Stage two is query optimization. And a lot of people are like, well, what is query optimization? Well, query optimization is where, let's imagine that we're having a conversation about a shovel that I'm buying, that I want to buy from, say, the Home Depot. If I then turn around and I'm talking about the different shovels options and I find a specific shovel, and then I say, how long is it? The query going in to search for how long it is, I can't send how long is it. That's what you said. I have to actually be aware of the entire context of the conversation to write a query that is optimized for searching against the knowledge that we want. And different knowledge sources may require different types of query. Like if it's lexical search or vectorized search, I might need to use keywords versus a full text search. So what happens here is that we rewrite the query to be able to be available in both keyword and full text search. Then we go into stage three, which is information retrieval. And this is where a lot of people are confused. Copilot Studio does not ingest your documentation. When you go in and you say, hey, I want to look at my website, it doesn't go and pull your whole website in. What it's doing is it's actually running a search against the Bing API because that's what's indexed the website. And so when you start thinking about where your data is, you want to be thinking about how is it indexed and how is it vectorized? Is it chunked? Things like that are really important to understand because we're going to run a search query that's based upon the query optimization we just got, and we're going to get search results back. And those search results with the chunks of the information are what we're going to pass to the next stage, which is stage 4, summarization. This is where we go out and we hand it to the large language model in conjunction with the query, in conjunction with all the different context of the conversation, the guardrails, all of that stuff are passed in. That then gives us back a summary that comes back. Once we do that, we go to stage 5, which is provenance validation. Provenance validation is where we're going to go in and we're going to say, okay, let's make sure that we actually got the data from the sources. Let's check that, and let's figure out the citations that need to go in conjunction with that so that way we can say this is where we got that information from. Now, once we get that, we push it to summary moderation. Summary moderation is going to do the same thing as stage 1, but it's going to do it on the response to make sure that we're not responding with something that isn't okay to respond with. We also had guardrails in Azure and the Azure AI side in stage 4, but this is another check to make sure that response is not something we shouldn't say. And then we go to stage 7, which is response delivery. So all of this is happening whenever you search within knowledge or whenever you ask a question that's answered within knowledge. So let's talk about tools really quick. So with tools, we've got all these different types of tools. We have connectors, and we have over 1,400 connectors today. We've got, you can build your own custom connectors. We also have REST APIs that you can call. We have prompts. Prompts are going to give us the ability to say that, think of it as like your own custom prompt that you can build, and you can say, here's some input and go summarize this, or go take this piece of information and do something with it and extract this piece of information and give it back. There's a lot of things you can do within a custom prompt, but this is your custom prompt capability as a tool. We have agent flows. These are your business process automations, otherwise known as Power Automate on the back end. And so this is where you will see that we have those that can be plugged in. And we also support Model Context Protocol, which is going to be this ability for you to take a external service and just consume that external service. Now, how is a Model Context Protocol different than a connector or a REST API? The answer is Model Context Protocol is not only access to an API, but also it gives model context around the API and how the API should be used. So whereas a connector will be sorry about that. It's actually where we can define a custom API that we're going to use that comes in and says, well, this is what the inputs are and the outputs, and we can actually define it down for ourselves. So it's going to make it much easier for you if you use Model Context Protocol. The API provider is providing you these instructions. In a connector, we're going to define them for ourselves. So just be aware of that.
Are you sharing your screen, Dwayne? Apologies for the stuttering. Can you reshare it? Oh, we lost it for a second.
Oh, did we lose my screen? How long ago did we lose it?
I don't know if you know, but it's like you...
When you blinked out for a minute.
Yeah, you blinked for a minute and then you came back. I would say maybe 30 seconds ago.
Okay. Yeah. So let me do that. Sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
Please let me know if it happens. See it now?
We do.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So just so you can see, these are those connectors, REST APIs, prompts, agent flows, and Model Context Protocol. So now that we're in this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how all of this stuff works together. Okay. So we're going to go in and we're actually going to build something together today. And I figured if I was going to build something for you guys, then why don't I build you something that you could actually use yourself? And that is, we're going to build ourselves a Copilot Studio agent that helps us with Copilot Studio. So we're going to go in and say we want to create a new agent. And when we go in and say we want to create this new agent, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this prompt tool here that lets me go through and create our agent. So I'm going to tell it that I want something that helps me with Copilot Studio and prompt engineering. It's going to ask me, would you like to give it a name? I'm going to give it, this is what I want it to be called, is Copilot Studio Assistant. And then it's going to ask me about some things that I might want to explain how it, what it's supposed to do. So I'm going to tell it I want it to help us write prompts, create power effects, formulas, all these type of things, and help us navigate Copilot Studio features, all of these different things. And you'll see on the right, it's kind of building this as we go. And then it's going to say, do I have any public websites that I want to add? And I'm going to give it learn.microsoft.com. And now that we've kind of got this, you'll see that we've got the basis of what we need over here. And we could go test it and talk to it and everything. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and hit create. And now while this is creating, I want to make sure that you understand what's going on the back end. So at this point, we're having to provision everything. We're having to build all the different things that you used to have to build. If you go all the way in Bot Framework days, there's 15 different services that you had to go build to be able to stand up an agent just to get a hello world. Well, we're building all of that with AI models and everything on the back end and provisioning it all out right now. Now, you'll see here that you get this little warning up here at the top, and you'll see that it's saying that It's not available quite yet. It's still setting up. Now, what's going to happen is I can tell you that you will always see that the instructions are kind of the last thing to come in. And you can see that now your agent has been provisioned. And you can see here, we've got all this information. We've got a description. We've got information about the orchestration. We've got instructions that are been built for us. We've got a knowledge source already. Everything's already built for me. And we're already using, because we just moved to GPT-4.1 by default, so that will be the default model that we're using out of the box. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, how do I begin using Copilot Studio? And what you're going to see is it's going to go through and it's going to use knowledge to be able to answer this question. And I'm going to do this real quick just to give you a little bit more visibility so you can see it working here. And you can see here it says that the orchestrator decided that this was for knowledge, and it's going to answer this question on how you can do it. And we've got different links that are available based upon the knowledge that we've provided through learn.microsoft.com. You can even scroll down and even see the rationale. If you click this button, you can get the rationale on what's going on. But let's say I want to do a little bit more, because you know what? You guys always come to me and ask me about a very specific topic. And, I don't really love having to answer licensing questions about Copilot Studio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say that I would like to browse, and let's go to my downloads over here. And let's go into my 101 demo files. And guess what? There's the licensing guide for Copilot Studio. And I'm going to go ahead and just add that to my agent. Now, as soon as I've added this to my agent, what it's going to do is going to upload it to Dataverse. And when it uploads it into Dataverse, because I did file upload, notice that the website is calling Bing, and that's getting me the answers from Bing. And now that we know how knowledge works, you can kind of understand how that's going on. But you'll notice that it says in progress here. And why it's in progress, this is Dataverse doing the indexing and chunking of the file for us to make it available so that we can ask questions about the licensing guide. Now, for the sake of time, we're going to move on, and if I have time, we'll come back and ask a licensing question to it at the end. But let's move on to a tool for a second. So if I go over to tools, I can actually say that I want to add a tool. Now, the easiest tool to kind of get your feet wet, if you've never worked with tools before, is just come up here and type weather. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab weather right here, the MSN weather. And then you'll see here that it created a connection, which is an anonymous connection. Now, for an API that is anonymous or uses a API key, when I add it in and I can hit add and configure here, I want to kind of walk you through what's actually happening on the back end. So this takes that connector and it's going to make that conversational wrapper, which turns it into a tool. And you'll see here that because the connector was actually built pretty well, it gives me a description of when it should be used. But the other thing is that if I'm using one that's got an API key or it's anonymous, I don't want to ask the user to authenticate. I don't want to make them make a connection. So I can just say make or provided. Now, the other part of this, because it is a connector, and this is different than an MCP, is because right here, I have the location and I have units. Now, what is the units? You can see here, it's basically should be imperial or metric. Do I want to make the user ask this question to the user every time? No. What I want to do is say, I want to do a custom value. And because this is a connector and I'm in control, I can go in here and I can actually choose that I want imperial as always to be the answer to this. Now, when we go in and we look at the completion, we'll look here and we'll look at something like, let's say pressure. Notice here that what we see is that the atmospheric pressure, or maybe I should get something that's easier to say, is the description of the output. So not only do we have a description of the input that we need right here for the location, that's what I need to give it. This is what I'm going to get back from this API with a description that explains to the model what it should do. So now that we've done that, I can actually ask about weather to it. And what you're going to find is that I can go back over here to my test canvas here, and let's just clear this out so that you guys can see the orchestrator do its job to make this really simple. If I come in and say, what is the weather? What's going to happen is the orchestrator is going to look at the tools. It's going to say, wait a minute, I need to use the weather. Then it's going to go in and say, well, I need to collect the location. You didn't give me the location, so I need you to tell me the location so that way I can get what you need. I didn't create a question to do that. It's going to figure this out. And I actually happen to be in New York City right now. So I'm just going to say New York City. And now it's going to go out to the API, get the weather information. It returned all that information. And now what's happening is our response generation engine has taken that input from that API and answered a question for us in this. Now, the next thing that we want to look at, and that's an example of just basically a connector. And if you want to do custom connectors, you can do custom connectors. But when you build them, just make sure that you put the descriptions in for your custom connector to make it easier to turn it into a tool later. So now let's go and let's do a different tool. Let's come in and add a new tool. And this tool, what I want to be able to do is I want to use a prompt. We talked about prompts and what prompts are, but what I want to do is I want something that will help me write good prompts. So I want to know if it can teach me, like tell me what I did with my prompt and whether or not that prompt is a good prompt or a bad prompt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it this. I'm going to come in and say, okay, here's what my prompt is that I want to give it, but I need to have an input. So I'm going to tell it that I want to replace this text. And if I do a forward slash, I can say text. And now I've got a text input, and I'm going to call this text input right here. I'm going to come in and call it this, which is the prompt I want to analyze. And then what you can do with this, which is kind of cool, is you can say, here's a sample set of data. I'm just going to say summarize this text, right, as what an example of a prompt. Now, when I do this, I can come over here and I can choose the model that I want to use. I could add a custom model. I can do all of that. But then I can turn around and hit test as well, and you'll actually see the output come back based upon the sample data that I provided. And you can see looks good. So let's go ahead and save that. Now that we've got that saved, what's going to happen is it'll go and it'll create that. We're going to hit add and configure. And again, do I want the user to have to authenticate to this prompt? Am I using something where I need that? Probably not. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, I want this to be maker provided. The other thing I'm going to do is I need to update this description because that's not clear enough to the model to know when to use this. So you can say this tool is used to analyze prompts that the user provides as an example. And again, these are really simple things that you can get really complex into your descriptions and such. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to update our prompt to analyze because just like before, if you recall, we said we need to give the model a description for the input. So in this case, this is a prompt with an input. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. Now, I'm going to give you a little trick really quick here that a lot of people don't know about. And that is, what if I don't really, maybe I've got things that it's a little confusing when to use one thing versus another thing. Maybe this tool could be confusing to another piece of information. So I'm going to show you how to nudge Copilot Studio and to orchestrate it in a certain way, because remember, we were playing with the orchestrator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the overview. And remember, we had these instructions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add another line of text. And what I'm going to do with this text is I'm going to say to use the prompt analyzer. But guess what? I don't want to say it like this. I can do a forward slash, and I can say the prompt analyzer. So now it knows that I want it to use this for this particular function. So I've just nudged it to say, here you go. This is what I want you to do, and this is the tool I want you to use to do it. And it'll make sense later as we add more pieces where that's going to be important, because not only do I want to do prompt to analyze prompts, but I might also want to give you prompt guidance. And so when I do that, it could be confusing to the orchestrator. So now we've got the way to nudge it. So now let's go and test it. And here, let me just hit this again to refresh it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in this, which is basically analyze this prompt for improvements, which is a summarization of text about the novel Moby Dick. What you're going to see it do is it's going to go over, we should see it orchestrate to our prompt analyzer. See it pulled out the information, which is the actual prompt that we want to analyze. And we're waiting for our prompt to come back and give us a response. And here you go. Here's things that I might want to think about how to improve my particular prompt that I just built. Now, let's move into topics, because we talked about topics and topics being our superhero, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can go build a topic. And there are a couple of ways to do it. We're going to start with add from description with Copilot Studio, because yes, Copilot Studio even has a Copilot. And so we're going to let Copilot Studio use its Copilot to help me build something that would allow me to be able to let people come and join our mailing list. And I'm just going to tell it that I want to be able to say the Copilot Studio mailing list, let the user provide their email address, first name, last name, and all of this to be able to get more information on Copilot Studio announcements, right? So I'm going to just go ahead and click create. Don't have to give it any more information than this. And we'll close this really quick just so that you can see. And look at this. It gave me a trigger with all the information that I needed in my agent. I've even got it even created that it's going to be called Join Copilot Studio Mailing List. It's got a question to collect the email address, and it's even saying that is an email address. I've got what is your first name, and last name, entities, and even a return message. And if you notice down over on this side over here, you can see that this actually tells me everything that it went and did. Now, you may think, oh, I can only use this one time, but you'd be wrong, because you can actually click on something like a single node, and then you can give an explanation of things that you want to go do to just that node. So it gives you the ability to keep iterating on this. Now, imagine that I built this and I wanted to hook it to an API or something. The way that you would do that is you would insert it right here, and you would come in and you would say, add a tool. And this is where we could come in and basically do an agent flow. So we could do a Power Automate flow. If we wanted to do that to do it, we could also connect with a connector, or we can use a tool if we've built a tool. So any of these could be the case. We're not going to wire it into the service today, but let's just say that we did, and we go ahead and we hit save. Now what's going to happen is I'll be able to come in and I'll be able to test this. So now let's go ahead and clear this out just so that you can see. Make it easy to follow. And I'm going to say, I want to get notified when there is news about Copilot Studio. Okay. And when I do this, what's going to happen now is it's going to fire our topic. What is your email address? And I can call it, and I can say it's dude@copilotstudiodude.com. No, that's not going to get you to me, but I am Dwayne Robinson. And you can see here we got our confirmation and such. Now, even with this, you can even go look at the actual topic. Like if I go into the topic and look, you can even see in Copilot Studio that it walked this process and it went through. We can even go into the variables and look at the test variables and see what was passed in and everything so that we can troubleshoot and diagnose our custom topic. Okay, so now Now that we've done that, we've built some really cool stuff. So let's talk about variables, right? We talked about that as being one of our ingredients. And a variable is where I'm just going to store some information so that way I can use that information again later. Now, there are different types of variables. There are custom variables, or which are ones that you define. Then there are system variables, which are ones that are available from Copilot Studio just in general. And I'll give you an example of one of those. There's one called activity.text. That is actually the last thing the user said when they were talking to the agent. But you also have like user.language, which is their language, and things like that the agent is speaking with that person. Then we have environment variables. These are really used more in the dynamics world, but think of them as you're moving to different environments that are being connected to, like production and QA. This is going to be what you can set in environment variables. And then we have formulas, and formulas are going to be where I want to calculate out this particular information. So just be aware these are different types that we can deal with. Then we also have different scopes. And what I mean by scopes is how long do they persist? They can persist for the conversation, like we're in this conversation and it's just that topic that we're talking about. So they only persist for the time that we're talking about that topic. Then we have global. Global is going to be they persist for the entirety of the conversation. And then we have cross session.
See when this ends.
So it ends in about 30 minutes. So you're on not on mute. So then we have a cross session, and a cross session variable is going to be where we're going to not only through the conversation. If you terminate your conversation, you come back. That's a cross session variable. So the last part is that these pieces of information, these variables, are stored in what we refer to as the conversation state. This is the additional information that's being captured by the conversational agent to be able to be used through the conversation state. So when we talk about agents, this is where we were talking about we have all these other agents that we can build. So we have a child agent that can be built inside of your agent, which this will be orchestrated to. You can orchestrate to it. It can contain tools and knowledge so that you can explain how to use these particular tools and knowledge and have your own custom instructions on how they should be used. It's also inside of your application. So it's not that these things are outside and you're calling that agent that's a separate API or a separate application. It's inside of it, and they are solution aware, so you can package them up and distribute them. So just be aware that is a child agent. Now, when we get connected agents they're still orchestrated too, but they are their full standalone agent. They can be other Copilot Studio agents. They can be built inside of Fabric, Azure Foundry, and the SDK, but they're outside of your application. They're in their own separate implementation or solution. And with that, because they are a separate application, they have their own authentication and their own settings. So when you're trying to connect to them, you have to keep in mind that they don't have the context of the conversation without it being passed to them. And so it's an integration to another application. So don't think of this as a service that you want to build, like microservices, because if you're thinking about microservices, they are stateless by default. Okay? That is the definition of a microservice. It cannot have a state. But we just talked about agents and that they have a conversation state. A conversational agent is stateful by definition. So if you start trying to make microservices out of connected agents, you're well on a path to failure. So don't do that. Just keep in mind, this is so that you can use them together, where I'll give you a great example of this. When you think about building an employee assistant, if you think about, maybe I have an HR agent and in my employee assistant and an IT agent. What if I have employees that are full-time employees that want to access both of them, but maybe I have contractors, and those contractors they never need to get the full employee agent because they're not an employee. They don't need full employee services, but they still need IT support. So I could have the IT agent be a connected agent that comes in, and the people who are just contractors can just talk directly to the IT agent with no other access to anything else in the agent, into the employee assistant. So just keep in mind, these are going to be situations where they are absolutely useful and they have a purpose. Just make sure you understand what you're doing with them. When we get into channels, again, channels are going to give you the ability to plug it in and talk to it wherever you want to talk to it. This will be things like Microsoft Teams or WhatsApp, or being able to talk to it on your website, all of those different things. So just be aware that these are how you're going to talk. And different channels have different capabilities. So I can't give you an adaptive card or a visual card when I'm calling you on the phone. So you need to keep in mind that you need to think about the channels that you're going to publish and make sure that the channels support the capability that you're trying to pass. Otherwise, you could have a problem with your implementation. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to jump in and we're going to do a quick demo of Copilot Studio, variables, agents, and channels. Okay, so here we're back into Copilot Studio, and we're going to jump in and take a look at variables. So earlier today, we created a topic, and that topic was Join Copilot Studio mailing list. So now I've created this, and you can look at it and you can see all this information. Now let's look at email. It has a variable right here that we're saving the email into. And you can see here that this email address is set to be a topic. You can see that you can even set whether you want to receive or return values back and forth to other topics. You can also change it into a global variable. And as you can see, I can also say allow to carry between sessions. So that's where I can make it where it's available even if the conversation ends, that variable isn't being reset if the user reconnects. So we'll keep that at a topic level. And then what I also want you to see is I want you to see that there's also the ability for the variable to be set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you variable management, and I'm going to say that I'm going to have a variable now that I want to set a variable. Now this is where I can create one, but let's first start with what can I set the value to, or what variables can be set. Well, I can create a new one of my own custom one, but there are also system variables that can be set. Like I can set the language or the time zone. These are different variables that if you wanted to affect them, you can affect them even though they're system variables. But those are the only ones that we can really affect when we're dealing with this. Now, if we go further, we need to be able to set a value. And the value that we can set is we can set it equal to a custom variable that we've already created. We can also set it to, remember I said the last thing that you said to the agent was activity.text, and you can see there's all kinds of system variables here that are available to you. You can just see them, scroll them, and there's tons of different system variables. Here's our environment variables like we talked about before. And then we also have the formula. And again, here's where I can use Power Effects. And you can even use this little expand button to get more space to write your Power Effects. And notice that I can, if I do, it even has IntelliSense for it to help you write your own formula to be able to calculate a value to set as that variable. So this kind of gives you an idea of what you can do within variables. Now let's go and take a look at agents.
So super excited for that, Dwayne. I just wanted to pop in and say there's like 20 minutes left, so just we need to add
we're almost
time
done.
For okay.
Yep, no worries. So we're going to go in and we're going to add a child. So let's go in and say that we want to add a child. So we go in and we say that we want to create a child agent. Now, this child agent, when we go create it, again, is inside of our agent. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a name. It's going to be called Care Prompt Guidance because there is this great framework called Care that helps you write good prompts. So what I want to do is make it where we can come in and give it a name, give it instructions. We want to give it a description so it knows when it should be called and all of that. Now, the other thing that I can do is I can give it information around how it should be used. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some knowledge to it. I'm going to go and select, and I'm going to put in this PDF. And then I'm also going to add another piece of knowledge as well. So we've updated that one. I'm going to also add in that I want a public website. So I'm giving it 2 different pieces of knowledge that this agent has access to. And now that we've done that, we've got our agent that's capable of doing this. Now, I'm going to hit save. And remember, I told you guys that we can nudge it to be able to say, when should it do prompt guidance versus when should it do analyze a prompt? So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here inside of the instructions. I'm going to give it this instruction set on when it should use it. We'll back this out and put in that we want to use the care prompt guidance agent to do this. And with that, we will go and we will test it really quick. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, how does the care prompt guidance help write prompts? And what this is going to do is you'll see it fire the agent. And it'll use the knowledge in that agent to answer this question. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is going to be the channels. And that is the channels here. So when we look at the channels, you're going to see in here that we have these different channels that are available to us. And if you look at the different channels, just be aware that your authentication setting by default inside of Copilot Studio, if we look at this by going in and looking at the security tab here under the settings, you'll see authentication. And authentication with Copilot Studio by default is Entra ID, which limits you to only be able to do Teams, SharePoint, Power Apps, or the M365 Copilot channels, which is why you have this particular up here. So if you're wanting to do one of these others, you have to define your authentication for one of these other items. So just be aware of that as you start to look at channels. Now, I'm not going to publish to a channel, but know that you have to publish, and then you can select a channel and add it in. Just like if I wanted Teams, I can come in and say that I just want to add the channel, and it will add the channel in, and then I can talk to it through Teams. Now, one last part that we are going to do really quick, and I'll show this to you, is analytics. So there are analytics for makers to be able to see how effective, how people are using it, what's the satisfaction that we're having and activity. We also have admin analytics where you can see the usage. You can see suggested actions. You can get security information. We also have audit through Purview, and we have telemetry where you can get full agent telemetry as well. Now, where that is inside of Copilot Studio is when you come in, there's an analytics tab. And when you go into the analytics tab, you'll see that it's not available at first because we have to actually publish it. And we'll go through a quick publish, and you'll see it populate in here really quick. And it will give us all the information. Now, what does the publish do? Publish makes it and updates what the users are going to use on the back end. So as the maker, we're building, and until we publish, our changes are not committed. So you can almost view it, if you're familiar with writing code or something of that nature, it's equivalent to the compile on the endpoint. So this will go through and it'll go and publish out, and we'll be able to see it. And then you'll see that once we do that, we can calculate the value of the ROI if we want. You can see all the way down through all these different pieces of information. And there is a new capability that we also added as well, which is going to give us the ability to say that we want to make evaluations and things of that nature. So we can run test sets in this as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to our trusty moderator and person running this for us, Ashley. go ahead and take it back over, and let's get into the wrap up.
Thank you, Dwayne. That was our last question. So thank you, Vijay, as well. Yeah, and thank you guys for joining. And, we hope to see you guys at our next sessions, and have a good afternoon, morning, evening, noon, and night, as I always say.